So, yes, technology is helping us. Well, this is one of the disruption of the storm, okay? So if someone is telling you that global warming doesn't exist, you know how to answer. So, again, thank you for coming. And it has been really, a thrill to host you today. Because, as you probably know, this is a very special year for ESCP Europe. In fact, it is our Bicentenary. So, yes, we've been around for many years. We're actually the oldest business school in the world. But we like to look at ourselves as we were, and we still are, the first into the future. And yes, I think we were, actually. In 1819, the school was founded by Jean-Baptiste and Vital Roux, who, in the quest of answering to the challenges posed by the first industrial revolution, they decided that a new rank of managers, at that time they were not called managers but merchants, need a special school. So eventually they established the first business school in the world. Then in the 1973, the school extended its reach outside Paris, opening campuses in London, Berlin, Madrid, later on in Turin and Warsaw, becoming the first business school to have a European footprint. So we can say the first European academic institution. At that time, we were at the beginning of the third industrial revolution. You know, we used to say it started in the 70s. But we were way before the first European elections. So it is nice to underline how the management of the ESCP was really forward-looking, and they were realizing that the European project needed a new set of skills to be developed in the managers, because the European manager was not ready. So the European project needed new European managers. Today, yes, today we are at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. Or Alessandro Baricco is calling that the digital revolution. Somebody is claiming that it's already there. Somebody is claiming that it will start later. But we are again in a moment where new things are happening. And the school, keeping faith to its mission, which is the one of inspiring and educating tomorrow's business leader, it is once again at the forefront of the academic management innovation. And how we're doing that? By valuing the role of human intelligence in a world that apparently is led and ruled by artificial intelligence. So today, for us, this conference is a celebration of the history of the school, of the greatness of the people, the managers, the deans, the professors, the students, the staff that run the school before us. We really owe a lot to them. But it is also a first step into the new world of management thought leadership that we want, of course, to be ahead of anybody and be the first again. So I leave the stage to Professor Terence and to the other speakers, who will show you, like Morpheus in Matrix, how deep is the rabbit hole of artificial intelligence.
Thank you very much.
We are wondering what is happening to the world. Everything is changing.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high-tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
Inside our own heads is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe.
You might ask yourself, can we get to be superhumans?
All right. So it will work, right? Technology, you can't rely on them. There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming here. Thank you very much, Professor Rattolino, for passing on the baton. I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Terence T. But before I actually go into talking about me and something, I'll make a few comments on AI. I would like to actually at this stage introduce the three very, very distinguished speakers we are having today. First, we have got Anna Simioni, and she is now currently the advisor to BCG. She has a treasure of experience when it comes to looking at how people, the issues within a company, within a corporation. Next to her, after her, I guess, is Mr. Davide Dattoli. He's the co-founder and CEO of Talent Garden, and he will be sharing with us, talking about a few things about future of work. Last but not least, we have got Professor Riccardo Viale, and he is a very, very renowned expert on behavioral economics. And now, about me, I am none of those, compared to these three heavyweights. The only thing I am is one, I'm a professor at ESCP Europe. That's my first identity. And my second main identity is that I'm a co-founder and executive director of Nexus FrontierTech, a AI consulting company that is based in London, Tokyo, and Hanoi. In the next 20 minutes, I would like to do is to say a few words about, today. More specifically, we want to look at, some of the, the issues that are around us, not so much on the technologies or AI side, but rather on the people side. But first, let me start with the fact, and that is this. There is no intelligence in artificial intelligence, all right? I live in the UK. In view of the current British politics, I know for sure there exists natural stupidity. But I know, but there seems to be no artificial, no intelligence in artificial intelligence. Now, take my word, natural stupidity, because that is something that Professor Viale is going to go into. It's actually a lot more than that. But the key here is this, I believe that there is very, very little intelligence, if at all any, in AI. Now, you may be asking, why? Why is that the case? I always book my flights online because I would rather deal with machines. They're much easier to deal with. The problem here is this. If I were to have to deal with people, what happened? First, I will probably be put on hold for 10 minutes, waiting. Once I actually get to talk to a human customer service staff, what happened? They will actually ask me to actually read out card numbers, read my name out, and all of a sudden I realize that I'm in a mess. Nothing got sorted out. So, AI is like machines. When it is great when it works. However, when AI, like machines, when it doesn't work, I would kill to talk to a customer service representative, human. As a matter of fact, any human, particularly after I've handed in, my credit card data, my credit card details. So, humans plays a very, very critical role. And let's not forget one more thing, and that is this. AI is pretty much like professors, okay? To the outside world, many people believe that we are we know a lot and we can solve very, very difficult problems. In reality, we can only do a few things properly and capably. So is AI, because what AI can really do these days, at least, at this very moment we're talking about, is that it is only, it can only deal with very, very clearly defined task. So if you train an AI model to recognize a dog, recognize dogs, you won't be able to get the very same model to recognize cats, or as a matter of fact, anything else. It is very, very narrow. And it is exactly because of these, of these limitations and taking from this vantage point that, I believe that, whether AI is going to be more intelligent or has any intelligence at all is purely dependent on what we humans being would be doing with them, the holder of all intelligence. So I would like to actually make 4 remarks today about which serves as a common thread to what all our 3 distinguished guests will be talking about today. So the first one is this: the need for multidisciplinary approach to AI. Now, I think in the past and even up to now, we have a tendency to leave the development of technologies to tech people and engineers. And I think that is very, very, very wrong. Silicon Valley prides themselves on basically able to do a lot of things. But one thing they do is this: they would actually go and do something, and then they would rather get a slap on the wrist later. They don't think about the consequences. All right. Now, is that a problem? I believe that it has got a long-lasting and it could be potentially very, very damaging consequence. All right. Why? Why is that the case? Well, I mean, you probably have heard of the situations where Google was, developing image recognitions, and they identified Black Americans as gorillas. Okay, you probably have heard of it. If you have never heard of it, buy my book, which just came out this week, on AI. Let me share with you a less well-known example. And this is what AI is recognizing. So if you can see, right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see what is happening on the 4th box? And that is this. It actually looks at the person, a man, to be more specific, and basically label it, identify it as a woman. Why is that happening? Right? In the first case, where the Google is Google's a case of image wrongly, made image recognition, what happened was that the people who feed the data in, they were not thinking through what type of data they should be using. In this very case, I believe that they were using basically just data of white people to train machines to recognize humans. And in this very case, I believe what happened was this. If you are looking for pictures of people cooking, chances are you will see women in that picture and not necessarily men. So the story here is this. We should actually get people to start thinking about what they are actually feeding the models. And this is a major problem, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the reason why we need to have a multidisciplinary approach to AI. Because if your, gender, if your sexual orientation, religion, race, culture, politics is different, and they are you are not in the room where AI is being built, chances are whatever reflects you will not be built because you are not there to represent yourself. You are relying on the others to come up with an AI model. And I believe that is very, very critical as an issue. Yesterday evening in London, we have got an event on women in tech. And one of the things I always argue is exactly what you're seeing here. We need to actually get people to start thinking about what kind of data they're throwing in. And I believe that one of the best way, and probably a best way to bring real benefits coming from AI is to actually have people coming from different walks of life to actually contribute to thinking about the models as well as the data that is being used. All right, second, business schools should emphasize cognitive skills. I hated it. I absolutely hated it, not business schools, but I hated it when I hear the term soft skills. Because soft skills, the word soft in soft skills implies its lack of quality, weakness, a lack of strength, lack of usefulness. When, if you think about it, going forward, this is exactly the type of skills that we'll be needing more, all right? Think about it. when machines or AI is going to take over more and more work, like such as analytical, those like a work that requires a lot of calculations, what is left to deal with are basically the fussy stuff. And who is actually better to who is at the best position to sort out the fussy stuff? Us human beings. And I believe that soft skills, or my preferred description, cognitive skills, are much better when it comes to serving that goal. Now, lots of people have been asking me, so what sort of skills and competencies are required, and what type of cognitive skills are needed? So I decided to once and for all settle the matter by looking at a number of studies and flowing in my own, and including the findings coming from a piece of a work I did for Professor Rattolino over there in Milan last November. And basically, these are some of the competencies and skills that I believe to be useful. And I always encourage anyone who would listen to me, young people who would listen to me, that these are the things that they will be needing. As a matter of fact, anyone who is listening to me, they should actually be looking at this, because it's not just for young people. If you think about it, active learning is just as applicable to us as to, regardless of what age you are in. You have. Right. Let me move on to the third point. The third one is organizational, models will have to change. The other day, I had a call with someone who was about to leave Microsoft. And then, so I asked him, I said, what happened to you? Did Microsoft fire you? He said, no, Microsoft didn't fire me. I said, so why are you leaving? He said, actually, it's not just me leaving, it's all of us leaving. Then I said, what do you mean by all of you are leaving? He said, yeah, all of us are leaving because Microsoft hired all of them as contractors. Now, why would Microsoft hire so many people as contractors? His answer, at least at that very point, was the company does not have to pay pensions. Right? Now, this, however, doesn't really hide the fact that, one, I think companies will no longer be that interested in hiring full-time staff. Put yourself in the shoes of the workers. These days, workers ask for a lot more flexibility, a lot of have very, very different requirements when it comes to what kind of work, where they're going to work. You may be surprised to hear this, but the number of people using the tube, the underground in London, is actually coming down. It's there are fewer and fewer people using it for very simple reasons, because more and more people decide to work flexibly. And with the rise of technologies, it works for them. Indeed, what we have seen, probably a lot of you are actually doing it already, is this. You are working in the gig economy, right? And there are more and more people who are willing to take on the gig economies. And this basically brought me to a term that I think, is going to become more and more like a part of our vocabulary. And that is so-called full-stack freelancer. You probably have heard of something called full-stack engineers. What a full-stack engineer does is this, is someone who works in a software computing, like a software firm, and he or she has the ability or enough knowledge to work in every single layer of software development from start to finish. Here, a term that was introduced to me by a good friend of mine, he was saying that, going forward, we are going to see more and more people holding portfolio of careers. And how they actually thrive on is this. They are going to be able to do one or, a number of these things very, very well so that they can actually make money out of it. Now, why am I talking about this? The answer is simple. As you can see, companies are actually changing in terms of organizations. Let's not forget, organizations are getting flatter and flatter. All right. At the same time, the other day I was I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was experts in leadership, and she was telling me that when it comes to HR functions used to be very operational. Now it has actually moved up to strategic level, because one of the keys in going forward when it comes to running any organizations is talent acquisitions and talent retention. I think people, employees, what companies should be how companies would be dealing with them. That is a topic that Miss Anna Simioni will be taking would actually give us more insight in. And also, Mr. Davide Dattoli will also share with us more about how the future of work is, what it's going to be like through his experience at the Talent Garden. Right, the fourth one is ethics and trust, right? And I believe that they will play a very, very critical role. Let me start with trust, okay? You probably don't know someone called David Dow. You probably know, you have heard of him probably, but you have got no idea what the name is. There's nothing to you. But what happened to him on that day, on April 4th, 2017, I'm sure you would remember. He was the man who got actually dragged out by United on the flight, right? Now, let me actually jog your memory on what happened on that day. What happened was that day was United wanted 4 passengers to be out of the plane. And so what things would happen was this. First, United will have an algorithm, make the decisions based on a predetermined set of conditions in the absence of context, right? And in this very case, or just like any case with airlines, is this. If you want to get passengers, discourage passengers from taking this very flight, so that for United, what they want to do is they want to place 4 of their own staff so that they can fly them to Louisville and they can serve a different flight. 3 of them got off after they were given bonus. So the machines, what happened is, in order to encourage the 4th to come out, they actually up the machine, the algorithm up the bonus or the compensation, if you like. There were no takers. What happened then? The algorithm decided that it is time to inform the authority, airport authority, to actually drag someone out. Now, here's a question. Is it right for us to simply, first, is it right for people to simply take whatever the algorithm says on the screen and just take actions without thinking anything? Second, is it right to actually trust a system that has got no understanding or appreciation of the circumstances, flexibilities, or empathy? No, nothing. More importantly is this. The algorithms is probably built, and therefore people actually blindly follow and trust, a procedure that is probably designed by a number of people who didn't really think through what it should be like, should the situations arrive, in all but they probably didn't take into account all future scenarios, right? So that's basically, to me, is trust, whether we can trust. Now, and don't forget that we're not talking about whether we should trust the decisions of the machine here. We're talking about whether we should actually trust the decisions already made by the machine. All right, ethics. Right, so this is this is what happened. When after that, I don't know who came up with it. Brilliant. Let me talk about ethics. All right. Now, imagine this. Imagine that you or someone wants to actually experience what it would be like to be landing on the on Normandy beach on June 6, 1944. All right. These people want to experience the heroic act of the Allied soldiers charging on the beach, to liberate France. Okay. Now, if you're a game publisher, would you publish it? If someone is asking for a game like this, now take it and put it aside. Let's consider another issue. What happened if someone said, "I want to experience the thrill of being an ISIS member to behead my hostages"? Okay? How do you therefore draw the line between heroism or an terrorist act? My biggest worry is this. If you can you can make money out of it, if this is profitable, someone is going to do it. Right? So, these are things that we need to actually think about. Now, take it let's use another example, driverless cars. I know we're very, very far from driverless cars. It's long before anything is going to happen. But that should not stop us to start thinking about, these things. When it comes to driverless cars, who do you kill? If whatever, the car needs to decide to either kill the pedestrian or the driver. And if you're the car manufacturer, who do you think you would ask get the car to choose? Let's not forget, if you kill the driver, you also kill the sales and therefore the profitability. So how do you actually decide? Or let's take one more example. What would people call the perception filter? You probably have heard of it. You've probably seen it in Black Mirror. Perception filter is basically this. What happened if someone said, I want glasses that allows me to actually filter out those elements that I don't want to see in front of me. For instance, I don't want to see homeless people on the street. Is that ethical? Is that right? Or worse yet, if I don't want to see people of different sexual preference or people of different colors, can I actually filter them out? Is it right to make those things? There's a lot to actually think about when it comes to ethics. So all in all, right, what I'm trying to say here is this, with the four things four remarks I made is this, I think in the era of, the human intelligence really need to smarten up in the era of, artificial intelligence. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think there is a lot we need to think about. And more, just as important, what I believe is this. It's not about human versus machine, or it's not black and white. It's not virtual versus vice. I think there is a lot, in between the two that really have to actually do a lot of things with. And therefore, I think we should all get very excited about, the 50 Shades of AI. That's all I want to say, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon from my side, and thank you, ESCP, for inviting me. So, Professor Terence raised the bar for me, but unfortunately, I will start with giving you not good news. So, HR is not yet strategic as it should be, and people are not yet strategic as they should be. What I ask you is to hold the good news for the end, okay? So there will be some good news, but not at the beginning. And I want to say I'm not a professor. Currently, I'm a consultant, and usually the idea of consultants is that they are a little bit theoretical and some way idealistic. I've been an executive for 16 years, and I know that what I'm going to say at the end is doable. So the good news are not only good news, but are doable. But there is a long journey to do. And in that respect, what I think it's really the illness of the Western society, one of the illness, is that we tend to be cynicists. You know what the good way to describe a cynicist person, is that the person doesn't consider to be good or smart enough, but they say, but you are not smart enough either. So why should I bother to be better if you are not better than me? And so the way to see organization with a cynicist eye is really what makes every change more difficult. Because, I'm not the best manager, but you are neither. So what's the big deal? We keep doing what we are used to, okay? So the small part of cynicism that is in all of us will dislike my speech. But I hope that the other part of us will find more ideas to think. So let's recap a little bit. First, Industrial Revolution, with steam and water, we were able to mechanize, okay, production. Then, with the second revolution, energy was making us possible to create the mass production. And with the third revolution, with the electronics and the IT, we were able to automate production. Now we are in the fourth revolution that, all the things that Professor told us are really already here. The bad news is that in terms of management and in terms of the way we manage most of organization, and of course I'm talking about an average concept that it's not reality, but it's representing, the majority of the organization. We are still managing with the scientific management approach that was invented almost 100 years ago. So we have been through revolutions, but we are so in love with the second revolution way of managing organization. You all know about whom I'm talking about, the famous Taylor guy. Why it is so rooted? Because in a so-called predictable environment, stable environment, it is very easy to manage for mass production, okay? Command and control. What is the command and control still telling us? That we can separate, that we can divide design from execution. So we can have people that think and design what should happen, and then we have other people that execute, okay? Make things happen in the way someone else has designed. So I don't know if you recall the consequence of the mass production way of working. You remember Charlot in the movie Modern Times? That was then walking like he was still working also in his private life. And keep in mind this metaphor, because it's not so, not so far away from something that is happening today. So the command and control, so dividing the execution and design has a lot of consequence in our capability to react to things that were not predictable, okay? So, and this has been discovered many years ago. Toyota and the Total Quality, decades ago, already say that, even when you manufacture a car, you need people with intelligence in the shop to readdress and change things that were designed before. And of course, we have a lot of examples in the past of people that were experimenting new management approach. Olivetti definitely was a giant on this, but also Carlson, the CEO of the Scandinavian Airlines in the 80s, he was inventing this concept of the reverse pyramid. So, but despite the fact that we know it's not working, we keep organizing companies around this idea of dividing design from execution. And I really guarantee if you have been working in an organization for more than 6 months, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? So, first thing is to remember where we are coming from in the way we manage an organization. The second thing is that the complexity of the word has increased tremendously. But the complexity introduced because of this separation between design and execution and command and control, it's way higher than the external complexity. Only in the last 30 years at BCG, we calculate that we increased 6 times the internal complexity. Why? Because we want to predict. So, in order to have reliable results, every time that there is a new area of complexity, we introduce new policies, new procedures, new rules, new requirements, and so we are creating complicatedness in the organization. And I will show you a slide that usually I show to make people feel a little bit better. We say in English it's misery, Terence? Needs companion. So when you say, it's not just my organization, so it's not just me. So see this data. So average 7 approval before a decision can be made. Okay? 40 time of managers spent writing reports. 30-60% of the time spent in meetings with peers. Can you relate from the people that are working in organization? And 40-80% of the time devoted to not value-added activity. So what this data, and of course, those data are coming from the top 5 major organizations in the world in terms of complicatedness, okay? So those are the worst performers. But I think the bad news is that they were very honest. So I don't know if in other organizations we get the same honesty in results. So what these data are telling us? The first one is that we don't trust the judgment capability of managers. If I need 7 approvals, it means that you need other people checking if the judgment of one manager is correct. Okay? So no trust in human intelligence. Second data, the time spent in writing reports, is this idea of the command and control. It's more important to verify if people have done what they were supposed to do. Reports is always on the past. It's not about the future. Okay? It's an incredible amount of time. The third data, spending time in meetings. The command and control management style led to specialization, okay? So design and execution, I am the best person to design this activity because I am the expert. And so if you have silos in organization, you need a lot of meetings to make people talk. By the way, I was joking many years ago with my former CEO that introduced the concept of divisions in my former company. And then he was complaining that people were not cooperating. And I would say, you call division. How can you expect that if you are working in a divided world, you cooperate? So language also is powerful. The last about the non-value added is because if you are doing things without knowing exactly what is happening before and after, a lot of the activities that you are required to do for you have no meaning. Okay? So you're not thinking you are creating value. So the point that I want to make is that in this world, at least people feel disengaged. And we know, if you remember how it was painful to stay in a school classroom with a not really exciting professor or teacher, when you are not disengaged, you are not learning. So, at minimum, we create an environment where people are not really pushed to learn, towards learning. Okay? The third bad news, and then I'll stop. The third bad news is that with this idea of dividing the design and execution, we have created more and more the idea that a manager can manage without knowing what their people do. Because then you monitor, you see the report, but you don't know what they do. And I'm really fed up of managers that say that their colleagues are not doing what they are supposed to do. And so my question is always, okay, but what they do? If they don't do what you want them to do, what they do? Because I don't think they just stay like this the whole day. And you discover that they don't know what their people do. Why they don't know? Because they don't go and talk to them and see what they do. They meet the people only in meetings when they are more interested in their reporting, so tell me what you have done. But I don't know why you don't do what you were supposed to do. So this idea of disconnecting managers from the rest is that we lose the opportunity to understand what is happening in the organization, okay? And this has many consequences. There is a very old study that is called the iceberg of ignorance. Most of the leaders take decisions with the 4% of information. Okay? Now, with EI, we are hoping to get more, but what type of information? But the problem is that when people are not engaged in a different way, they perform what they think is the most reasonable thing to do. Okay? So the manager doesn't see what he or she would like to see and introduce more rules, more procedures, more policies. The complexity, it's creating more and more. And at BCG, but I will not talk about it, I just show, we have identified 6 rules that every manager and every organization should really try to implement in his organization in order to reduce all the issues that I just said. And you will see that the first one, that for us is the most important, start with this idea. Understand what your people are doing and why they behave in the way they do. There is a reason why we are not engaged, we don't cooperate with the colleague, we don't share information. There are reasons. We need to understand them. So, what is the good news? If we understand that the 3 points that I was making are against human intelligence, we can work to unleash human potential. And I'm really passionate about it because I think that, when millennials or young people come to an organization, they have a tremendous potential. And with all our rules and policies and procedures, we just say, don't think, execute. And this is the thing that machine will do much better than us. But we need to keep our fuzzy logic, as Terence was saying, our way of thinking. There are 3 words that a professor from Harvard used to describe this science of possibility of human being, is that we need to balance better the focused and unfocused mind. But with this, you remember those data? We don't have time to think because we spend time doing reports, approvals, and so on. But what is important is that we regain our fuzzy logic, our creativity, our capability to thinker. For the non-English, thinker means really, when you say armeggiare, sperimentare with ideas, okay? So this is something that we need to restart to do. Dabbling, doodling. When you listen something, there are people that scratch, This is what our mind needs in order to be creative and innovative, not just being concentrated and focused. And by the way, 80% of the CEOs worldwide say that one of the most difficult skill is innovation. But then, and that it's most important and most difficult to find. I think now we know why it's so difficult to find it. Okay? Thank you.
Welcome. I think that Terence explained us very well what does it mean, artificial intelligence and technology, and how it's changing our life. And Anna described a lot what does it mean to implement this in a corporate environment. The problem is which type of manager we want to be inside that company. And I think that every one of us is very clear that the topic that we, as new generation, as millennials, as new type of people are bringing to the market, we have totally different requirements. We need different type of services, different type of product. The problem is that the big data and the artificial intelligence that we have in front of us bring us to something that we don't know. Because it's very clear what will happen in the next 3 to 5 years. But it's really not possible to imagine how, putting these two things together, what we are creating in the next 10 years. Which is the challenge that all the company will facing. The different of business model, the different of type of organization, the different type of people that will need our product and services. So how we adjust the organization to base on that? How we adjust ourselves on this? We've seen this slide many times. all the new startups that are coming to the market and are totally transforming all the industries. Telco was the first, was very clear. Everything changed. Where all the big telcos were making money, now doesn't exist anymore. The same things are in new business. There are Kodak that now is a lovely old-style brand. Is Blockbuster that it's crazy. And the problem is that how all the other companies can adjust themselves to avoid to be in this list in 5 years from now. The topic is that it's true that there is a lot of new startups. And some of us probably want to create a new startup out of their career. But there are many, many interesting stories of big corporations that innovate themselves. I don't know how many of you knows that Netflix doesn't come out a few years ago, but I can say, it's not one, it's obviously 1997. But it's old, but not so old. But somehow it still have many years, and they were distributing and bringing to your home every week one film, the best film that you want at your home. One day they understand that the need of the customer is exactly the same, watch amazing films. But the difference is that the technology allows them to totally change how they did it. They're not sending by the post office and going there and take their own VHS, but they can directly, with streaming, bring that to their home. And they were able to destroy their business model and to create a new business model that were made by this technology. The same thing was Apple. Today, Apple is the most, and the best, they have more cash than I don't know who, but, and they're creating and they are seeing as super innovative. One day, they were producing this amazing stuff that was the iPod. I think that many of us know. And the topic is that one day, they decided to create the iPhone. But iPod was making more than 50% of their profit. One day, they decided to kill their 50% of profit of one company to create a product that maybe innovate and create the Apple that we have in front of us today, but maybe kill the company overall. So you imagine that board of directors that approves to launch a product that go against the biggest product that you have inside your company. How many board of directors can do it? I think it's something incredible. So the reality is that all the company in the next 5 years has to totally change how they work. Not based on something else, but the client has a different need and the team need to work in a different way. We have listened before from Hannah how the people want to work differently, how Terence explained what does it mean to be a freelancer today. So the topic is how you can change a company. I think that technology on this really helps because somehow you have to focus again on which is your biggest value. And you have two of them. One is your team. Technology will reduce the number of people that your company will have, for sure. There is no other way. But on the opposite, you have to focus again on the second biggest value, that is your client. And think again how your team can create value to your client. There is too much politics. There is too much meetings. There is too many things that distract you to focus on the most important things, that is client. So the topic is that all the time that we talk about technology, we think about this amazing technology, artificial intelligence and so on. But the only things that can make this happen is not the process. It's not the process that creates innovation. Apple has not created iPhone with an amazing innovation department that creates the future of a company. Apple were able to create the iPhone only because all the company, all the employees were innovative and were creating a different approach. So they innovate in how to sell it. They innovate on how to make it marketing. They were innovating on all the different parts of building a product. If you want to create, and obviously all the company now what they're doing is say, okay, innovation technology. So what I do, I create the innovation department. They take a smart young guy and they say, hey, you have to make the future of the company. I give you nothing, but you will create the future of this company. And they are super proud of it. They make marketing investment and they say to everyone that they are innovative. In the reality, the risk is that in 5 years they will not exist anymore. Maybe they can arrive to 10. But the reality is that if you don't change all the people inside the company, you will never be innovative. And when you are talking about people, I think that it's the same things also if you think about our country, but in general, all Europe. We are one of the best countries and one of the best ever in the world. If we see our past, we were able to create Italy. You know, this Made in Italy, that is the most researched things when you're typing inside Google. And Italy were built because we were able to put talents at the central of everything. And probably we lose it. And we are not talking about only Italy, but it's the same when we're talking about Europe. Talents are the only things that make you go advanced. If you only focus on process, if you only focus on the technology itself and so on, you will never go anywhere. So the problem is, what does it mean to put talents at the center? How you can do it inside a company, inside a country, inside all Europe? I think, and what we are thinking, and what we've seen in the last 7 years, from when we start the company that I was founded with, is Talent Garden, we think that since the past, there were always places, physical places, that put the best people together. It's the same inside one company, it's inside if we are freelancers, it's the same in the different environment. And we are not inventing anything. There were all the courts and the patrons that put the best people together, the most creative one, in the same place, and stimulate them, and they create amazing products, services, and type of arts. It's the same with the cafe in the literal period, in which there is this place that all the artists went together and was more creative. And if you think about the industrial district in the last 150 years, they were the power of Italy, and this is where the best mind come out. But today, which is that? Obviously, it's not anymore this. We think that is co-working. Co-working is a new way of working only because people can come, share a connection, an internet connection, because probably they need only this. They need a place where they can work with other people, other talents that are working in the same environment. As Talent Garden, we decide to be vertical on digital and technology sector. We decide to be selective. Only few people can enter. We have today more than 3,500 talents across 8 countries in Europe that were selected as the best startuppers, freelancer, big corporation that want to make the difference when we are talking about digital and technology. But the real value is not about the place itself, it's about the people that are living inside. Because the topic is, when we are talking about technology, all of us are connected through WhatsApp, Skype, whatever technology, in which we communicate really in real time. But did you come out of one idea in one chat? All the best ideas come when you're drinking a coffee, eating a pizza, play at football table. So the reality is that the most creative moment come out when you are with other people in a creative environment, in an environment that supports you to transform an idea in something and into reality. This is why it's so important to create also physical place outside companies or inside big corporations that support and develop innovation. So the topic is, as manager, as people that are inside big corporation, are creating their own company, we have an incredible opportunity. We are probably in one of the best periods in life. Because it's true, there is crisis, a lot of crisis. I was entering the job market in 2008, and everyone was saying, you know, since 2007, everything was perfect. Now there is crisis, you will never find a job. I say, wow, I'm super proud of it, I'm super lucky. But in reality, the topic is that crisis is not only economical crisis, it's the change of what people want, on how the company has to work. And if you are able to implement digital and technology, a new mindset inside your own company in which you are working, if you're not only listening and follow procedures, and you're not only saying, okay, everyone has done like this, and I have to respect and do exactly in the same way, but if you are able to be a transform agent inside your own company, to really decide that you want to change your own company, also if you are a super junior person, you can. You can, because your own company has to totally change in the next 20 years. They will be destroyed if you continue in this way. So they have for sure to find a new ways to innovate, a new ways to transform themselves. And we are in the best period ever to make a career inside a company. So I think the real question is which type of manager you want to be in your life. Thank you.
So I prefer the podium because I am an old-fashioned professor. I agree with most of the, the argument that were given by the previous speaker, I must confess. But I want to come back to the important and central topic of the workshop. What is artificial intelligence? Because now artificial intelligence is a very trendy concept. Everyone uses as it was a new concept, but it is an old concept. Yes, in 1987 I published 2 books about artificial intelligence, one in UK and one in Italy, in which I collect the chapter coming from important scientists like Marvin Minsky, Tommaso Poggio, Daniel Dennett, Pribla, and so on. The question was, is it possible to replicate the human mind in a machine? And the answer was yes, but. Yes, because if you understand how is working the mind, reasoning, thinking, process, you have strong knowledge to replicate. But the but was you must not fall down in the bias, in the trap of the previous father, artificial intelligence, that is a kind of computational bias of mind, thinking that the mind is a device of calculation. These were the founder of artificial intelligence in the Dartmouth conference of 56, Marvin Minsky, McCarthy, Herbert Simon, there was also Nobel Prize for Economics. They had an idea about mind as a kind of computation. The metaphor was the mind is the software of the brain. Like the software has something to do with the hardware, computational hardware, the mind has to do with the brain as the hardware. And what is the goal of artificial intelligence? Is, and I quote the founder of artificial intelligence, make the machine to behave in a way that would be considered intelligent if a human being would do the same. This obviously is a typical Turing test if you read Behind the Word. This was obviously, we call as a cognitive scientist, the old cognitivism. In the old cognitivism, there was only, the importance was only about computation, no room for sensory activity. The mind was detached from the body. This was the typical feature of old cognitivism, the computational theory of mind. But we know the neuroscience, neurocognitive science has discovered and proven this last year that the human mind is full of intuition, passion, emotion, bodily sensation and motor abilities. This is what we consider mind. Then, from this point of view, we cannot think the mind as a cold, rational intelligence, and from this point of view, the solution, what might be the solution, if we cannot rely on this concept that was the previous one? Obviously, the solution that is a kind of pessimistic solution is if we are not a Homo Spock, cioè the Spock of Star Trek, a cold, reasoner, hyper-rational, maybe we are like a Homo Simpson, full of passion, full of emotion, without any kind of rationality. But it's not true. We are in the middle. We are Homo heuristicus. We use heuristics, rule of thumb, to reason and to decide. In this case, this is a typical heuristic that was also quoted by Andy Haldane, the number 2 of Bank of England, Jackson Hole, some years ago, in which instead of thinking of the man as making computation to catch the ball, we know that the man catch the ball in every sport with only one cue, one reason, maintaining constant the angle between the gaze and the trajectory of the ball. There is no need of computation. Very simple. And this kind of computation, simple computation called heuristic, have many kind of features. There are many heuristic in predicting, in making decisions, reasoning, judgment, and so on. And the importance of heuristic, as I find a definition that may be useful for you, is that, as was established by Gergi Gerenzer, a famous cognitive scientist that works in Berlin, we live in a world of uncertainty and not in a world of risk. In a world of uncertainty, we cannot maximize, we cannot use optimal algorithm because we don't know all the options and we cannot put to the option the probability. Then from this point of view, the point of view of uncertainty, we can use only heuristic decision-making that are simpler, are faster, and are more accurate in comparison with algorithms. There are a lot of examples about the use of heuristics. In many studies, they discover that 40% of top managers, when they have to make crucial decision-making, they use intuition and heuristic reasoning. They don't use compensatory analysis, trade-off, and we can say rational economic decision-making. The same Haldane, pointing to the 3,000-page of Basel III book, in Jackson Hole asked to the banker, apply the principle less is more. Simplicity is more important to cope with the complexity. You cannot cope with complexity with more complexity. And his paper that was the most cited paper of the year was The Dog and the Frisbee. It was applying the gaze heuristics. This is one thing. The other thing that heuristic intuition cannot be effective only by a disembodied mind. Only embodied mind, embodied cognition, we can say a mindful body, can reason and make decisions that are adaptive. There was one of the first study or research was made some years ago in which they found a very simple result. More heavy you have a backpack, more you calculate, more the distance, the slope. What you have with you change the judgment and reasoning processes. This was one of the first examples of empirical study about the embodied cognition. And embodied, I mean not only the brain, I mean visceral, sensorial, and motor apparatus. Because these are the most important things. It's not only the brain. In the past, we thought that the mind was detached by the brain, but this is something that probably nobody knows anymore. The importance is that not only the brain, but the entire body is important to decide. Perhaps some of you have read Damasio, the Descartes error, which introduced the somatic marker. When we decide to do something in the future, we have a kind of anticipation of the effect of our decision, and the anticipation is based on visceral, pleasure or unpleasant phenomena, situation, perception, and feeling. And in front, and with this kind of feeling, we decide to do or not to do what we are thinking of. Then the body is very important. When you are in front of a fear, like a dangerous Doberman barking to you, the first thing that you have a body reaction. The second you categorize as a fear. And this is contrary to what Charles Darwin was saying in the past, in which he proposed the opposite. More you categorize, before you categorize, second you have the body reaction. This is not true. It has been discovered that it is the opposite. And in Italy also an important research discovery was made, probably you know about, the mirror neuron theories. When you have to do in a market, in an organization with other, you can anticipate, understand what the other is doing, what the other is feeling, because there is an embodied simulation of what the other is doing, want to do, or how he feels. And this is something that to do with the body. Then, from this point of view, what I want to say, and I conclude, that artificial intelligence is in the wrong track. Machine learning, deep learning are very powerful devices to make computation, and they are very strong in games. AlphaGo is an amazing program that beat any expert in the Go game. There was before Deep Blue, and so on. But these are games. Real life is not a game. It's not a risky world. It's an uncertain world. We cannot make the same comparison between the strength in the game with the ability and the help of artificial intelligence program to help us in the real life, in the turbulent, chaotic, complex, uncertain reality like financial market, politics, health, and so on. Then, from the point of view, I think we must, if you want to be in the right track, we must follow three principles. First, to create a map of heuristic according to the given task. Second, to incorporate heuristic in evolutionary computation algorithm that follow, like a genetic algorithm and so on, that follow a Darwinian approach that evolve according to the given problem. Third, developing robots that mirror the structure of human body. Not only motor and perception, but also sensorial and visual. This was embodied cognition, I forgot to show you. And this is where artificial intelligence should go to arrive to an embodied robot that incorporates our body, the simulation of our body. And then perhaps from this, if we follow this track, there is the possibility to reach the point of singularity. The singularity is what, in the words of Vernon Vinge that was written, they say, the coming technological singularity. In the singularity, there will be an intelligent explosion, an upgradable intelligent agent, such as a computer running software-based artificial general intelligence, would enter a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles that will overcome at the end the human intelligence. Obviously, this is an hypothesis. In a poll among experts in artificial intelligence, they predict that in 2030, the singularity will be attained. We will reach the singularity. But there were many predictions in the past that were not satisfied. In any case, this singularity is obviously something that worry people like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk. In fact, they ask many computer science philosophers, neuroscience to meet in California in 2017. From this meeting, there was the proposal, the Asilomar artificial intelligence principle, to go toward a human-centered artificial intelligence, to satisfy the principle of security and the ethical principle in the construction and the use of artificial intelligence machine. Obviously, something that Isaac Asimov did 60 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, so what we have time for right now is I would like to introduce, invite all my guests to come up here so that we can actually have a panel discussion. May I ask the three panelists to join me? Thank you. I think Riccardo, please, over there. I think Anna, please here, and Simioni. Davide. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're we'll try to actually make it as crisp as possible. And what I intend to do is this: I'm going to actually ask each of them 3 questions and make it, quite something that is practical. Answering perhaps some of the questions that you have got in your head. And I would like to ask each of you to keep it under 5 minutes so that we can actually receive some of the, the input from the others. So I'll start with you, Anna. So I said, the question here is this. We have seen that, one of the essential skills in people, essential skills for people is to possess the ability in, to keep learning and developing. Drawing on your vast experience in the corporate world, what would you recommend managers, to do in order to keep learning?
Thank you. I think this is the essence that will always prevent the singularity. If we keep learning and really, instead of thinking that learning is a given, we invest time and energy in making us great learner, I think we have a tremendous opportunity also to have a better life. So we know that learning is linked at least with 3 things. The first one is awareness. So if we don't know ourselves well, it's very difficult to know what we should learn and how we can learn at best. So I'm not, a new age type of person, but I think really that accepting that learning about ourselves should be our first mission. So knowing why we do what we do, knowing better why we are perceived in a way that is not the same thing that we think, so why other people have a different idea, and reflecting on what are the stories that we are telling ourselves that make us repeating certain behaviors and not really allowing us to change. So awareness, I think it's really foundation. The second thing is trust in ourselves that we can do and we can be better, so stop the cynicist voice, and trust other people that they can learn. So the 2 way of trust. And the third one is making choices. We cannot learn everything, every time. But if we decide what we want to learn, and maybe we can share and have a dialogue with someone else that has a different perspective of more experience on what should I learn, what should I focus on my learning, I think these 3 things can really help in improving, the human intelligence.
Very good. Davide, how do you learn? We know nothing. You want to take a question? Actually, I'm not planned for it. But since you are a great bachelor student of the school, I'll let you ask one question.
Wait 1 second.
Wait a moment.
Have you?
Hello.
Yeah.
Brave.
ESCP student, that's the thing.
Hello.
It's not working though. So.
But it's not important.
I can yell. Can you hear me?
No, don't worry. Start.
Yell.
Okay. Wow. There we go. So you said that awareness, trust, and making choices are the three things that are extremely critical in learning. How would you gauge these in form of AI? How much should we trust AI? How much should we be aware of AI, and how should that incorporate with the decision making?
I'll try to be short. Afterwards, we can build on this. First thing is awareness that there are things that AI is going to do better than us should be a very strong sign that we should learn something else, because otherwise we will be replaced. So awareness of UI, I think it's important. The second thing is trust. Unfortunately, as human beings, we have so many bias that we tend to think machines have no bias. We know that machines have the bias of the people who program them. So it's a false myth. But we tend to trust more machine than humans. And this is one of the reasons why I think trust is the thing that we should invest more time in learning. There is a way to learn how to trust and how to be trusted. It's not something that is there or not there. So, third, choices. I think machines can enhance our capability to make choice, but never delegate a machine to make choice for yourself.
Right, I'm going to ask, Davide. So, you shared with us earlier on, you said talent is absolutely critical. And, I cannot really, I cannot agree with you, more. It's because, humans, after all, is the one that is at the center of everything. I mean, that's what you said, too. So, question. Going forward, right, it's not like because we are all focusing on, human beings, we still have a workplace. We still have, a job life, work life. What will it be like? Because if, like we were saying earlier on, that, organizations will have to change. They need to move from improvements, efficiency improvement type of things, command and control ways of running an organization to something that is flatter, easier to organize, be able to have something that can handle uncertainties and complexities. Certainly, the type of work environment will have to change. What do you think, in your view, what is it going to be like?
So I think, as Anna said before, that all our work environment is setting up for the last industrial revolution. So we set up this because it seems the best way to organize people, and we have not yet understood what has to be in the future. The problem is that the number of people that a company will need is way lower in the future compared to the past. So the challenge that they have is how I attract and how I retain talents in the future. And based on that, you have to totally reshape how you as a company are set it up as way of organizing. So for sure, it's not anymore about having this amazing org chart where it is very easy to see everything, because org charts are not working. So how you have to be set it up? What does it mean to have an environment that help you to work well? And so in which you're not saying, oh my God, this morning I have to go to the office. I really don't want. So the topic is you have to think about a space where you say, wow, I want to go because I know that is a super inspiring space where, okay, it still works, so it's not super fun, but I am really happy to go there because it's the best place where I can be really productive and inspired about what I have to do. And the third challenge is how you can also help people to be more productive. Because the reality is that we have inserted so many digital tools to improve our productivity, but in reality, we have really lost the productivity. Because we are super connected, but we are also super defocused. So the problem is help people on not thinking that the working culture of the future is standard. So not all of us are working the same way. There are people that are very productive in early morning, people who are really productive during the night. So why companies are opening from 9 to 6? Does not make sense anymore. the company has to adapt on when people are productive. And the same thing is where it is. It does not make sense to go on the opposite part of the city if you prefer to work from your home. So the big challenge for companies in the future is to attract and to retain talent. You cannot have a global HR policy, but you have to really customize employee by employee what does it mean and how to help him to be more productive.
Very good. Any questions, just in case? Right, okay. Now, question for, going back to Anna. So, how do employers do it then? Because if the requirements is so different, are companies, the way companies are structured and organized, are they ready to take on to this? Because frankly, right, the best way to run the company, as far as I know, like you were saying, is to add policies and policies on top of policies. You can count, now, if we want to actually move a table or a chair from this spot to here, we need to actually go through, 3 sets of policies. How do companies deal with it? How are they going to to run it?
I think really...
At the same time, when the startups are actually catching up and disrupting the whole model.
Absolutely. I think really all the agile, lean manifesto are explaining that there is a need to give more autonomy with a good alignment.
Right.
So if people understand the purpose, if people understand the reason why we need to do something and has a decent level of autonomy, things happen much better. Having said that, the rules are also partially introduced because of the awareness of the potential risk. So, and this, as startup, usually don't take in consideration, not because the risks are not there, but they just don't know. So I think what is really important is to be competent enough, but allowing the humans to take the decision where you can follow the rule and when it's the case not to do it.
Right.
And it's perfectly legitimate not to do it.
Right.
Making mistakes. Sometimes you make mistakes. And this
all of the time.
has to be acceptable.
Right.
We are not learning otherwise.
Something that?
I wanted to also make some question, but also some comment. What is important in organization, I agree about what you were saying, is to change also we can say the epistemology inside the organization. In most organizations, particularly in public administration, there is no culture of error. Everyone is scared to fall down in some error. And since they have this kind of fear, there is a prudential decision-making. They tend to do nothing, or obviously not innovating at all. Then this is the most important culture that should introduce inside the organization to allow innovation. Another important feature that has been studied abroad is what is called organizational citizenship behavior. To do the extra mile, not only for your advantage, but for advantage of the organization. There's a problem of institutional value to be part of something that is beyond you, and that is important to help the other, to be the consciousness, the altruism, and so on. When the organization has this kind of feature, they are more productive. Yep. And the last point is about startup and so on, because I am studying the behavior of startup. And what is important is the bias that the startup needs to have at the beginning. For example, the overconfidence, illusion of control, egocentric bias, and so on, that are important to start.
Not all startups are like that, probably.
After become a little handicap, then you have to manage after the first phase in order to give solidity to the organization, the company.
Earlier on, Davide was saying, so basically that's the talent gardens as a company. It relies on people talking to each other, right? Having said that, a lot of people are saying that, listen, with technologies, right? We are, personally, I would rather deal with machines You know, like as I said, booking flights. Actually, it's not just booking flight. You know, it's basically just about everything. I mean, I went to China the other day, and you know, you don't even need to talk to anyone anymore in the restaurant because all you need to do is scan the QR code. You have got the menu. You press the button, and the food will be would be put in front of you. And you don't even have to talk to anyone. You pay on the QR code, and you're done. You walk out. No interactions at all whatsoever required. Why is this still, you know, like insisting on, you know, like for instance, face-to-face interactions? Why does it still matter? You know, like which is basically the core of the business model of talent guidance.
Yes, face-to-face interaction is very important. One of the explanations that was also supported by a neuroeconomist called Paul Zaki is that when there is a physical interaction, there is the increase of oxytocin hormone. And oxytocin hormone is the hormone of trust. It was dubbed the trust molecule. And this oxytocin increase happen only in face-to-face, not through some intermediary like telephone or a screen, not by letter or so on. Then only when there is a physical interaction. This is an hypothesis, but there was some new research made by Colin Kammerer and others that tried to check if this was a real phenomenon, that oxytocin is a trust molecule, and they did this applying a game called Trust Game. I don't explain how it is made, it is Trust Game. In any case, they didn't find the same data. In any case, face-to-face works more than other, perhaps not by oxytocin, by other kind of neurocognitive mechanism. And oxytocin is a very interesting molecule that perhaps is not a trust molecule, but has something to do with the emotional and cognitive mechanism of the brain.
I see. So shall we actually be promoting more and more face-to-face interactions?
Yeah.
But then, you know, Zoom would not be very happy. You know, like, you know, all these, like, you know, over, like, online. Skype would not be very happy to hear that, you know. But so how do you guys go about doing it? You know, how do you actually get people to do face-to-face interactions more often? I strongly believe in the value of doing that. But how do you get people? How can you get them to be more interactive? I mean, honestly. Most people here, like all of us, have a tendency now, you know, when we go out and, I don't know, have dinner, people are checking their own phones instead of talking to each other. Yeah. Even like, I mean, like if I've seen families traveling in 4, each of them having their own device, and they're all sitting there having their holiday. Absolutely. Right? How do you do that?
Can I say?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think this is very interesting because if you see our generation is the worst one, because somehow we grow up without, and so the phone arrives and we are getting mad because we are connecting to it. If you have an iPhone, I suggest you to really see how many times a day you see your screen. And unfortunately, it's one of the worst moments of your life because you understand how much it's a drag for you. In reality, for the new generation, okay, so the famous Generation Z, it's totally different. New generation grew up with that in their blood, and somehow they are way more able than us on controlling themselves, on how to use technology, than how we are. And this is incredible, because we are really the worst generation on this, because we are totally connected, and it's difficult for us, the digital detox concept in which we are taking out technology from our life is something which we have to read a book to make it. But for new generation, they are way more used on getting and separate their digital life from their personal life.
Well, you're suggesting that they have got a self-discipline, built-in self-discipline.
They have to, because when they grow, they understand that it's part of their life. Otherwise, they will die in front of a phone.
Well, like, you know, if I were to do a quick sample of the students in my class, that doesn't look like the case. But what do you like?
Which age?
Yeah, Riccardo.
We be sure that if you want to finalize an agreement, a contract, you need face-to-face meeting. Yeah. And this why is more important face-to-face to finalize when there are important things, because there is an increase of trust linked to embodied cognition, perception of the other. You see in the three-dimensional way, you smell him, you give a hand, and then you have a physical touch of him. These are important psychological feature to increase the trust, apart from the oxytocin that was an explanation. Then these, I think, remain even in the future. Perhaps with the virtual reality, there will be something that simulate more the physical interaction. But until now, there is nothing that substitute the face-to-face interaction in some critical point of the agreement.
But what Anna was saying earlier on, right, as you saw, like, as we all saw on the slide deck, is that we spend 40 to 80% on meetings. And now you're basically saying that, you know what, let's spend more time on meetings. How do we square that? How do we actually, square that circle?
We need to reduce time in meetings, that's for sure.
Right.
Because we need to redesign the way we work, allowing more time for a different type of work, that it's not just sharing information in meetings. Having said that, Agile is working together, that it's not having meetings. So meetings, working together, physically or not physically, is a different
So how does it work at Talent Gardens, when it comes to not having meetings, something I personally would absolutely go for, shoot for. How do you actually go about, shortening not shortening is the wrong word, keeping the interaction at the productive level?
So first of all, it's about try to use tools that help you to, I can say, work better with other people. For sure, I think that the quality of the work that a tool like Slack are bringing to the table is incredible, because you are really facilitating the daily interaction, and they are structured somehow to facilitate that part. And the topic after is how you set up meetings. We have a series of books inside Talent Garden, and one of it was dedicated on how to improve productivity inside the working environment. We have to still adapt and use it better to internally, but like stupid things that everyone of us can taste is, when you have a meeting, propose to people to not sit down, but stand up. 50% reduction of time of a meeting, 50% more focus, and really a better meeting most of the time. How many of you have ever tried? Okay, still too low. Try it, because it's really something stupid, but very easy to implement, but totally change the approach.
Riccardo.
I agree. What is important also to underline is the role of the devil lawyer. George Soros introduced this, for example, in his board, to have 2 or 3 persons thinking that completely different from the other, and they start to try to falsify any idea and hypothesis. Then this kind of critical thinking is important in a meeting, not to fall down in what is called in social psychology the groupthink phenomenon. And then this is something to follow.
Think about 7 approvals, group thinking forever.
The 7 approvals, when I saw that, I said, this is scary.
Scary.
It's really scary, 7 approvals. I would like to see whether there's anyone who would like to ask a question, since my students actually started the, You have got a question you would like to ask? Yeah, ask. We've got about 5 minutes, so I would be delighted to actually have a slightly more, take a question from the... Yay.
We spoke about the implementation of AI in our future life and actual life. I wanted to know how confident you are that we're going to find cross solutions to regulate AI for the future of humanity.
Yeah.
So I think it's very challenging. Today it's more like a kind of war between US, China, a bit Japan. Europe is really out of the game.
Missing.
And I think it's key to find a way to regulate AI for the good of humanity. So how confident are you that we're going to find solutions in short, medium terms?
Right. Anyone want to give a shot?
This is
This
is for you.
This is for not necessarily. You are the experts. Yeah.
No, there are some interesting initiatives. For example, Fei, Artificial Intelligence for All. Fei, the head of the Stanford Laboratory in Artificial Intelligence, in which it opens the artificial intelligence to the marginal part of the society, from physical and psychological handicap and so on. And there is OpenAI, the Elon Musk, in which there is an open source for AI invention and discovery cognitive science applied to AI. The DeepMind, another project that try to increase the interaction between new artificial intelligence and human being, because human being has certain feature that is not fulfilled by the artificial intelligence machine. Artificial intelligence machine are good in making statistics, in analyzing big data and so on, but has no intuition, no emotion, no ability to embodiment that a human being has. The interaction between the two may increase a lot the decision making. For example, has been done an experiment for the diagnosis of breast cancer. The great clinician made 2.5% of error. Artificial intelligence algorithm made 7.5% of error. Both together made 0.5% of error. The collaboration between artificial intelligence and human being increase many aspects of the social life and human life.
And I think the challenge right now is this. You're talking about the, how do we actually put, basically restrain them, right, the development in a way that is ethically acceptable. One of my biggest a worry of mine is this. If you look at the US, the way they tend to actually control the development of AI is basically none. You leave it to the companies to do it. You leave it to the market, which can be very dangerous because market effectively pursued profitability. Whatever makes money, it will happen. Facebook, 87 million users take information without even thinking about it, work with Cambridge Analytica, Cambridge Analytics, and then we see what happened. So Amazon, for instance, I think just last week, 2 parents in the U.S. sued Amazon for Alexa picking up the children's voice, recording it without the explicit consent. You leave it with the markets, they decide, they would not care, and because as I said earlier on, they would rather do it and then get a slap on the wrist instead. In China, it's very different because you're not leaving anything to the market, but rather the party line, the government to decide it, which is the other extreme end, which means that if it's something that serves the government's advantage, it is acceptable, and if it's not, it's not. I think going back to what you're saying, I think I fully agree with you that Europe is falling behind and more behind in this field, in this at least in AI. And I think one of the things that Europe can actually do is acting as somewhere in between. It is a very, very difficult act. Having said that, it's not entirely impossible. If you a lot of us really hate the so-called GDPR, right? There's the General Data Protection Regulations. Every time you go to hotels now, it's a pain in the ass, right? You actually deal with the deal with the registration. But GDPR actually works. So much so, the Americans start to actually think about their own versions, putting it into the system. There must be something that is working, that is truly actually bringing the value. Anyhow, at this point, I think I would like to draw a close to the program. But first, may I ask you to join me to say thank you very, very much to all my 3 guests. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to all of you for coming. And let me allow me to get Professor Rotellino to come back on stage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Terence, Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Davide. Thank you so much, Riccardo. My takeaway is that in the area of artificial intelligence, we need much more human intelligence, so there is a hope for business school. We went through few years where they said, no, business school, they have no futures, everything is going to be replaced by Coursera, online, Harvard, whatever it's called.
We're still here, right?
But we're still here, provided that we leverage the human interaction, provided that we put human intelligence and cognitive skills at the center, which pretty much was the case until we became too scientific, because we envy as professor of management, you know, the science professor, because we are not scientists. We are at the very best, you know, witchcraft.
Witchcraft, right? Okay.
Spin doctor, something like
correct.
that. Thank you so much. I would like to thank Professor Chiara Succi. She was the academic, let me say, advisor and mastermind behind this conference. She managed to put everybody together. Don't be shy. These are very well deserved applause. And last but not least, I want to thank you, all of you, because you made it today here. It was pretty much kind of impossible. I was reading the news, and basically we had the worst storm in the past 20 years in Turin. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There is some food waiting for us outside, and if you like what you have heard, just post it on Facebook. All right, thank you so much again, and thank you to the speaker, and thank you to Terence.
Thank you.